of By a Fire. It's been a couple weeks, Devin,
And
since
now
we
it's
last talked, and I'm John.
Devil's Night 2025. Fire it up! Fire it up! To quote from an old movie, which you might remember.
Yeah, The
So,
Crow, right?
yeah, The Crow,
Yep.
Devil's Night, which, J.M. Barrie, I mean, there
We're
really
not there
was a
yet. That's
phenomenon.
tomorrow, isn't it? Isn't it the
No, no,
30th
no.
is tonight?
The 30th is Devil's Night. The night
Oh,
before Halloween
I
is supposed to
see.
be Devil's Night in Detroit and the Rust Belt.
I
And,
see.
while greatly exaggerated in that movie, there was actually a phenomenon in the 80s and 90s of like people just, burning down abandoned houses in Detroit and stuff.
Well,
Uh,
the game that just came out, Arc Raiders.
hmm,
Uh, it's an extraction shooter
hmm,
where you basically go into this post-apocalyptic, like Terminator. Basically, the
hmm,
machines run the surface, right? There's
hmm,
killing killer drones. They roll around and they blow up or shoot flamethrowers at you, or there's big spider ones, or
hmm,
there's flyers that either shoot rockets or machine guns at you.
hmm,
There's ones that just go around and spy and alert the other ones to come swarm you. And they used actual machine learning to power these drones in the game, so that when you're
hmm,
shooting it, it's not like most games where okay, there's an enemy and you shoot it. It doesn't really matter where you hit it; it just dies or something.
hmm.
It just has like a hitbox, and you just hit the hitbox, and it's like no, it's actually a physically modeled actual drone with rotors,
With components.
and like you have to shoot out the rotors. If you shoot the body or the armored parts of it, it's just gonna plink it, and you have to hit it a bunch of times to do anything. So you kind of have to blow the rotors out, and then it destabilizes, and it uses actual physics to model how the machine learning AI would control this drone. If it's like basically if you took machine learning and put it in a real drone and blew the rotor out, like how would it try to stabilize itself? They used the same software, but just in the game,
And
because as it turns out, they use simulations like that to train the AIs for real drones.
Yeah. And in similar, news in the state of the gaming industry, I mean, the popular online vehicle combat simulator War Thunder, they're now introducing drones and RPVs into their simulations of aerial and tank combat. And of course, the really big AAA debut of the month has been Battlefield 6.
Right.
Which also features drone warfare and is, again, becoming a little bit more controversial. I haven't had a chance to play Battlefield 6 yet, but,
I mean, to what extent are these games kind of normalizing this type of combat where
mhm,
it's going to get people like used to the idea? Because, right, like if you took a soldier from a past war, like World War II or something, or Vietnam, and you threw them into an environment where there's little drones with guns on them flying around and like, they're trying to kill you, like it would probably freak you out. I would think it would be
well,
terrifying.
an interesting fact. The first remote controlled drones were developed during World War One. Now, the Royal Air Force attempted to develop them for demolitions, but they were not really effective, so they were mostly used just as targets, as remote controlled
Hmm.
targets. Then, during World War II, you have much more famously
Well,
the
good against the
V1 and the
remote is one
V2.
thing. Good against the living, that's something else.
Right. Well, yes, but I'm just bringing up the history of automata and
Yeah, no, I know.
remotely programmed
I was just quoting Han Solo. Sorry.
yeah, but definitely the things that are now being used in the battlefields of Ukraine are a lot more sophisticated in terms of their heuristics and targeting ability than the V1 Buzz bomb or the primitive reconnaissance drones that the U.S. Air Force was using during the Vietnam War. Actually, if you ever come down to California, one of the more fascinating things at the Hiller Aviation Museum is they have the Orca, which was during the 1980s. And I did not know about it until I went to that museum, but it was kind of the first large RPV, the forerunner of the Predator and the Reaper drones.
Hmm.
And it's huge. I mean, it is the size. It is the size of an airplane. It is a large propeller black aircraft. The Hiller Aviation Museum definitely has some interesting things. But yes, there is the question, and another thing that's happening in
But
response
I mean,
to
there's been these things, but I mean, there hasn't been like we've seen in Ukraine where drones are like a primary means of warfare, right?
yes, but
And
we
of
are seeing
course,
some fascinating things in terms of the paramilitary police action that happened in Brazil this week, again in the favelas, where some of the killings or some of the assistance to the police in raiding it was called Comando Rojo. That was the organized crime group. They did use drones, and also the
hmm,
cartel, or well, so Brazil, the organized gang groups are often called commandos, or commands. That's just what is developed as the Brazilian term for their local cartels,
okay,
gangs. But they were using drones to drop explosives on the SWAT teams as well. So we
jeez.
are now seeing this evolution not only in military combat but in paramilitary combat.
Well, I mean, I
Uh,
think it speaks to the fact that uh, drones are cheap, and
mhm,
rigging a drone to do this stuff, it's kind of something that, guerrilla style fighters or pretty much anybody that can spend $500 on Amazon or something could get this thing together that could, and probably for a lot cheaper than that even. I mean,
mhm,
that's, retail cost for like a good one, but like,
mhm.
how much of a drone do you really need to carry uh, something that can impact the battlefield?
Well,
Probably not that big of a drone. So,
or I have
you
continued to
know,
maintain that the next big terrorist 911 event, the next paradigm changing terrorist event, is going to be a large drone strike on a civilian population at a sporting event or
well, let's
other.
let's remember that this being a live stream and everything, that's, you know, yeah, these
Well,
kind of possibilities are out there, but I think making a prediction of that kind may not be the best. I mean, I mean, there could be a lot of different things that could happen, right? Like, I think it's important to just emphasize the fact that we have to remain vigilant because, yeah, we have this thing with New Jersey earlier this year, um, right? Where you had, was it January or whatever, where there was all those mysterious drones flying in through New Jersey, and people thought they were UFOs or they were Chinese, and there was that guy that blew up his Tesla Cybertruck
mhm.
at Trump Tower in like Chicago or something, and he
Well,
claimed that he had written this note to like a podcaster or something where he claimed that basically that Chinese and the U.S. government had developed gravitic propulsion technologies. For that's, the implication there is that it's reverse engineered UFO technology that pretty much in his claim that only the U.S. and China have, and that's, yeah, I mean, if that's a thing and
ooh.
if they're stealth, like you could pretty much fly an army
Well,
of drones wherever you want.
this led me on to a tangent, but it's a fascinating tangent. This week saw the debut, or at least the public disclosure, of the Lockheed Martin X-59, which is the first silent supersonic jet. Uh,
Wait, when was
breaking.
this?
I am reading. This is Gizmodo, Passant Rabi, October 30th, 2025. NASA's supersonic jet finally takes off for its first super fast, super quiet flight. It is a in Palmdale, California. It is an
Oh, is this
experimental.
thing basically like the real life version of that jet that was in the latest Top Gun, the Dark Star?
Well,
It's like the new SR-71 Blackbird, basically, right?
it's a supersonic jet that flies without making noise, without making a sonic thump or a sonic boom. So,
Whoa.
yeah.
Okay, so this is not the replacement of the SR-71. This is just a supersonic jet that doesn't make a sonic boom.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
hearing about this, that they've developed this new shape that
yeah.
can basically avoid the sonic boom, and they've been talking about
I mean, it looks
developing
like a
commercial
dart.
airliners based on the same technology. Because if you had a, right, the problem with things like the uh, you know, the Concorde and stuff like that was, well, for one thing, it uses a ton of fuel, but
Mm.
also flying over civilian areas at supersonic speeds at like 30,000 feet or something, the sonic booms and everything, it's not necessarily great if you have
Yeah,
this in happening a lot.
yeah. But this thing, I mean, I'm looking at the photos of it, and I mean, it looks like a flying hypodermic needle. Like it's just got this ridiculously long nose
Yeah.
cone. It is stretched out. I mean, it looks like it's longer than it. It's longer on its front to back than it is wide on its wingtip to
Yeah.
wingtip.
Let me pull up that image here. Let's see. Yeah, this is just from Wikipedia, so I think it's safe to put in the stream. Um, yeah, pretty
And
crazy.
yeah, and another aircraft that's continuing to make progress in test flights. I don't know if they've had any real breakthroughs, but uh, the Whisk Generation 6 is also kind of taking off. It's an electric aero taxi, which I happen to know about it because it's just what's being tested out around in my hometown at the moment.
Yeah, well, we were supposed to have friggin' flying cars by now.
Oh, yes, on the subject of the flying cars. I just remembered this. Okay, so they've just gotten approval for starting testing. Um, Let me find the article. But it just got approval. Aleph Aeronautics, right.
Right.
Aleph Aeronautics has gotten approval for testing their flying car in at Hollister Municipal Airport. So,
Wow. So they're testing them right by you over there.
yes. Yes.
Yeah, the thing with these sorts of vehicles that I think is something people need to take in mind is, okay, you could put four wheels on a thing and it could take off and fly and land and then drive like a car. But like, in order to be able to fly, it has to be super lightweight. And in order to pass any of the safety standards that a car would normally have to have, you know, like,
Yeah.
it can't be like that. Like it's basically like a shell with like bicycle wheels under there. It's not like really a car.
Well,
So, like the
they're
idea of a
saying that
flying
they're
car was that there would be some technology that could basically make an actual car not have mass anymore. Like some kind
yeah.
of inertial disruption technology, like UFO type technology. And then if that exists, of course, that means you've got effectively the ability to travel through time because
Well,
you're bending time and space. So
Aleph Aeronautics, they say that their target number is going to be 300,000 per car, and they claim that they've already received 3,200 pre-production pre-orders. So
yeah,
wish them luck.
well,
Yeah.
probably the police department of Dubai or somewhere. I mean, I heard they
Hmm.
they love stuff like that over there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a cool idea. Like if it works, if you think about it, a lot of
Hmm.
guys like to have private planes and helicopters, and if you could have something like that that could go, I don't know, a couple hundred miles or something in the air,
Hmm.
land, and then just park in your driveway rather than have to rent a
Yeah.
slot at an airport, to keep it around. I mean, that's pretty cool, but
You can imagine John Travolta or Richard Branson or kind of people like that wanting to buy these things. Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to imagine what the insurance liability is going to be on like a car that can basically fall out of the sky if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know, but so yeah, so on to more like important things. Perhaps obviously last time we talked about the situations here in Portland and in Chicago with ICE and all this stuff, and I've been seeing pepperings of news reports, and apparently there was people in Chicago like follow the ICE vehicles around and honk, and the ICE
Well,
people don't
I
like
have to
that,
ask,
and
is
then they box
Portland
them in, and
burning?
there's well, it has been raining here a lot, so
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not aware of any major burns that we've had, but I do know that there was, I'm sure that the protests are still going on to a degree, but of course, once it gets cold and rainy out there, the number of people that want to go
Hmm.
dance around and hang out in costumes and stuff like that
Hmm.
diminishes. But
Hmm.
I haven't been down there in the last couple of weeks because other things been going on. But um,
Yeah, the
yeah,
main thing that I've been following from Portland and Oregon news is kind of the cuts of the SNAP benefits and kind of the food crisis that the state has been declaring, and with a number of kitchens and restaurants like Coffee and Laughing Planet. There's Willamette Week has an extensive list of restaurants that are offering to serve meals to people during this time as food assistance has been cut. And it is often said that, society is just three missed meals away from revolution. Well, we're certainly seeing that tested at this point. Um,
yeah. I mean, this is the thing that's the most troubling to me right now. It's the fact that we're entering effectively an entire month of the government being completely shut down.
mhm.
Um, And I mean, it feels like it has just dropped off the radar of the news and everything. Like, I feel like this should be something that people are really, really upset about increasingly every day that it
Mhm.
doesn't get resolved, right?
Yeah, but
But
what is happening
people are
instead?
just ignoring it.
Yeah, but what is
It's
happening
become like this
instead?
new status quo of some weird kind.
Yeah, is that there are these weird patches. For example, the heir of the Carnegie Mellon fortune, donating $130 million to cover the paychecks of the military. So essentially, at this point, the U.S. military is the world's largest mercenary organization.
But yet somehow federal government still has money to tear down the east wing of the White House and start building a ballroom.
We can't afford hurricane relief. We can't afford to keep people fed, but a $300 million ballroom for the gilded one continues forward after Trump has fired everybody in the design department. So
So
there
can you explain to
was.
me, because you work in a hospital
Mhm.
or not at, but you're associated with the hospital down there
Mhm.
in Cali, and of course, my understanding, at least what I heard through some news sources, was that one of the major sticking points that caused the Democrats to not want to sign the bill that the Republicans presented had to do with the way in which it would affect how government healthcare spending, Medicare, I guess,
Yes, yes,
is able to go to
hundreds of
minorities or
billions of
what,
cuts in
immigrants,
Medicare and
illegal
Medicaid.
immigrants, or
Well, it's
undocumented,
it's
or
not
what?
just that. It's massive across the board cuts to Medicare and to Medicaid. The hospital where I work, we're anticipating somewhere of a loss of 7% of the revenues as a consequence of these cuts. And they include cuts to rural hospital assistance. They include cuts to basically every kind of reimbursement. So it's across the board. It
But
is
how
a
many of these
huge.
cuts are unique to just the spending bill that's at issue, right? Because I thought some of those cuts were part of like the big beautiful bill, and now the spending bill had some unique stuff in it that was like above and beyond what was in the big beautiful bill or
Mhm.
something. Is
Yeah.
that correct or?
Well, okay, that's something I'm going to have to look at. But the fact is the big beautiful bill, it had huge, large cuts to it, and basically, as the AMA is reporting, yeah, I mean, California alone is expecting to lose $30 billion in annual funding as a result of HR 1. And So that's kind of what I mean, yeah, conversion factor update, changes to health insurance coverage through the Affordable Care Act. Uh, yeah, it's a lot of reductions in terms of the Medicaid provisions. And that's kind of why the Democrats have been refusing to cooperate on this, on any passing any continuing resolution. The
Yeah, I guess they were saying that like there's premium tax credits on the Affordable Care Act that would need to be extended. It's part of the bill, but the Republicans don't want to do that. And basically,
mm,
those tax credits help people on the marketplace afford health insurance. But like if they get rid of those, then basically some healthcare plans could dramatically go up in price. So,
mm,
like I heard somewhere that like if somebody is paying, I don't know, $1,000 a month right now, which is already a lot, like that's already, you know, the fact that people have to spend that kind of money based
mm,
on what people are earning right now, it's crazy. But that could go up to like 4,000 a month or something
mm.
where it just makes healthcare insurance become almost completely unaffordable for a
Well, one
large
of the
segment of the
things that's
population.
happening, and the counterproposal that the Democrats are advertising, is basically extending the subsidies to keep open enrollment under the Affordable Care Act. Basically, the cuts to Medicaid are projected by the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, to result in 10 million Americans losing health care coverage and insurance. So
Yeah.
that's where the fight is about. Because those subsidies are going to expire in 2 days on November 1st. So that's kind of a part of what the shutdown is about.
So effectively, if it gets to November 1st, then the things that the Republicans wanted to basically sacrifice out of the healthcare system, it goes away anyways because it hasn't been renewed,
Well, one
or at least
aspect
for
of it, one
okay.
component, which is basically if nothing happens, November 1st is going to be the last day where you're going to be able to enroll for a government Medicare, Medicaid health plan. So 2 days from now, if you don't already have a health insurance plan, you will no longer be able to get a federal or Medicare or a Medicaid health insurance plan. So people going forward, young people who are moving out from their families or people who are losing their jobs and are no longer able to get private insurance, they're going to be they're going to be marooned. They're going to be cast adrift. Not able to afford a private health insurance plan and not able to enroll for a government insurance plan. It's going to affect the Oregon Health Plan. It's going to affect Medi-Cal, which is the California equivalent of the Medi-Cal plan. It's yeah, it's serious.
Well, guess we got to keep our eye on that. Apparently, there's something maybe happening next week, but I mean, I feel like if it doesn't, like like I just don't see how our society can have this happen continually over and over. And if it's not the Republicans doing it, it's the Democrats.
Yeah.
Because like it's just dysfunctional government, and the
Well,
fact
one
that
of the
this could
things that
ever
bears
happen in a country
repeating
like
though
this, it's
is
just
that
insane to me.
one of the things that bears repeating though is that the Republicans are currently in control of all three branches of government and both houses of Congress. They have a majority in the Senate, they have a majority in the Congress, they have the White House, they have the Supreme Court.
Can you get your mic a little closer? It's a little quiet
Okay,
there.
what I'm
There you go.
saying is that one thing that I somewhat find feckless is blaming the minority party which does not control either house of Congress.
Right. But well, I guess I'm just saying, I'm not saying I'm blaming the Democrats per se, but I'm just saying that, right, like when Biden was in office and we had a government shutdown because the Republicans refused to sign, right? It's the minority who's the one that's always in position to object to getting on board
Mm.
with the spending bill and is able to basically block it like is happening right now, because right if
Well,
the
you see,
majority
but
could
that's the
just push
thing
it through no matter what, it would be passed and the Democrats wouldn't be able to do
Well,
anything
that's the
about it.
thing, is that if the Republicans were able to get their party to move, it's a breakdown in party discipline in the Republican Party. The Republicans are trying to shore up the divisions with their own party by getting the Democrats to rubber stamp, and basically the Democrats are instead saying, look, we're not going to help you to patch over for your own dysfunctionality
Yeah.
because we're not getting anything from it. You want to cut health care, you want to cut food assistance for our people, for our constituents. Uh, you know, the Democrats have a counter proposal, and that counter proposal is that you leave healthcare enrollment alone.
Right.
Um, so the
And why
Democrats
do
have
you
their
know?
terms.
Do you have a sense for why the Republicans want to get rid of that? Like, what is their like big opposition to that?
Well, it's a part of the steady, slow suffocation of Obamacare. Um, it's basically an effort to defund Obamacare. And it's tied into the various Republican states that have been refusing to accept Medicaid expansion for many years now. There's millions of dollars that states like Mississippi and Louisiana are missing out on because they're refusing to accept the Medicaid expansion.
So, do they basically view it as adding too much to the federal spending?
They view it as socialism. They don't want it. The whole idea of Obamacare is public health care as last resort. That is to say that, a range of groups like, the California Central Coast Healthcare Alliance and all of that, which receive, the Medicaid, Medicare, and Medi-Cal money and basically act as insurers. So basically, instead of having a centralized, Medicare administration that's providing health insurance for adults as a last result, you have a number of payers which are then subsidizing these nonprofit organizations which are then offering healthcare programs that are affordable and possible to all people. And then you also have state programs such as Medi-Cal and the Oregon Health Program.
And why do you
So,
suppose it is that whenever I hear people talk about this on Republican media, it's talking about illegal immigrants going to the emergency room and getting free health care like that or something. I'm just like,
well, here's the ironic thing is that, even if you get rid of this, you're still going to have illegal immigrants going to the emergency room and getting health care. And it's going to cost even more because basically the thing to understand is that unless we decide to, I don't know, abandon Judeo Christian values entirely, a hospital can't turn away a customer. Doesn't matter whether they're legal or illegal. Doesn't matter whether they're an upstanding citizen or a criminal. Doesn't matter what their color is. Doesn't matter what their condition is. Anybody that gets wheeled through the doors of an ER, the hospital has to treat them. And the hospital then has to hope later that there's going to be some source that is going to reimburse the hospital for the expense of saving that person's life. So I find it very disingenuous because the fact is
yeah,
is that that same problem is going to be happening, but now you're going to have fewer people with fewer insurance, which means okay. So I
yeah,
need
and
to
it's the
explain.
same people who say that they're pro-life, but then if somebody who's an illegal immigrant goes to the hospital and they're bleeding out or whatever, and they want
Hmm.
to just have the hospital turn them away rather than save their life,
Yeah,
be,
just
because it would
renege
cost
on the Hippocratic
some
Oath.
money, and of course it's like, well, people abuse the system, and I think one of the lessons I've learned in life is that you can't have a perfect system in any system that's big, right?
Hmm.
Um, Either you're gonna have a system that allows a degree of abuse, but it gets all the people that need care taken care of, or you're gonna have a system that turns away some people that need care as a cost of trying to not let anyone take advantage of it.
Hmm.
But you can't have a system that is perfectly fair and never has any abuse, but also always gives treatment to everyone who does deserve it. It's like you can't have, uh, a system where all crimes are punished fairly, but nobody goes to jail unfairly. Like either you're basically over policing or you're under policing. Like you kind
Yeah,
of can't just perfectly do it.
yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what the right answer is in either case. People will argue to the ends of the earth about it.
But
But I think when
basically,
it comes to
the
something like healthcare, and we're the richest country in the world, and we're spending trillions of dollars on military spending or hundreds of billions and stuff, it's like, I mean, we just have to find a way to get healthcare to cost less, 'cause why should it cost as much as it does?
and I mean, one argument is that most of the other Western countries have solved this problem, which is just moving towards a single payer government healthcare program. That's what Canada, Germany, Japan, Australia, they all do. The United Kingdom, national health is one of the
Right.
first instances of that. Germany and France are actually the earliest instances of that. So there are countries in this world that have managed to pretty much solve this problem for 130, 150 years at this
Yeah.
point. Uh,
The thing
so,
is, I feel like that doing it the democratic socialist way, right? That's the way Europe does it.
mhm,
And then we have this system where we kind of don't want to make it social, or at least the Republicans don't want to make it socialist for
mhm,
healthcare. And so even when we do try something like an Obamacare, it was done as like an online marketplace. Like it's still trying to kind of be capitalistic in a way.
yes.
But in a sense, I feel like the problem isn't access to the healthcare, it's the means to pay for it. Because if
Mhm,
everybody had plenty of money to buy a healthcare plan, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Everyone could just,
mhm,
if you could just work at McDonald's for 20 hours a week and
mhm.
make enough money to pay for your apartment and your groceries and your gas and your healthcare, and then any extra time you work above that
Mhm.
is basically money that you could put back into the consumer economy or pay for your kid to go to college or save up to buy a house or things like that. Like we wouldn't be having this conversation because you could just go get a basic job and pay for healthcare, even if
Yeah,
it was
but
just a
that's not
part-time
possible
job.
because
And
there are multiple layers of arbitrage within the current system.
right.
The
And
way
so
that,
and
yeah,
it used to be that you could do that back in the 50s or whatever, Blue Cross Blue Shield or something was, I don't know, $24 a month or something. It was,
mhm.
you could afford it.
But now it's been
Um,
monetized and now it's controlled by people that are seeking to maximize profits for their
I don't
shareholders.
necessarily think it's a big conspiracy like that, though. I think
Mhm,
it's literally just supply and demand. I think it's literally just because the income disparity has become what it is,
mhm.
and healthcare is a limited resource, the demand and the amount of spending power behind that demand just pulls those prices way to the side. Because actually, from the perspective of the top, I don't know, 3% or whatever of the economy, healthcare's gotten cheaper for
Mhm,
them
mhm,
because their income's grown so fast.
mhm. But there's just not, I mean, it has been, we have not seen an increase in the federal minimum wage since 2009. We're
Yeah.
on year 16 without there being any adjustment to the federal minimum wage. And one of the things that I've sometimes advocated, I've often thought that the sort of the dual purpose solution is what I call a Kotla indexed minimum wage, which is imagine if the
I know
minimum
exactly what you
wage,
mean.
yes,
A
was
cost of
indexed.
living indexed minimum wage, a minimum
Yeah.
wage that automatically adjusts uh, in real time, even to the
Hmm.
cost of living.
Hmm.
I
And so
100%
as
agree with you.
inflation and prices go up, your wages go up.
Yeah.
And this in turn, it creates an effect. I mean, one, it takes it out of the political calculus. It becomes
Yeah.
purely about, the spending power and the earning power of the dollar. And it also creates this economic pressure across the economy, across business, to want to have to oppose inflation because inflation means that your payroll is going to be going up.
Yeah.
And basically imagine if every firm was watching the inflation rate for what its effects on payroll. If anything, it would create sort of a business and economy that was inclined towards deflation to a certain
Well,
degree.
it's funny because we've talked about massively, or we've talked about, gaming earlier. And if you look at massively multiplayer online games, a lot of them that have in-game economies, almost all of them use a multiple currency system
Hmm.
in order to isolate certain segments of the in-game economy from each other so that um, you can't use a certain type of wealth in one aspect of the in-game economy to like inflate the prices in another segment of the in-game economy.
Hmm.
And it occurred to me that, if, and I don't know if this would work or not, but the idea of having a multiple currency system where, for example, and I think I've mentioned this idea to you before, but one in which, you get paid in a labor currency, a labor coin, if you
Hmm.
will, and then you can then sell your labor coin on an exchange $4
Hmm.
if you want to go buy a TV or a boat or a new car, something that is sort of a luxury-ish good or something that's not cost of living, right?
Hmm.
But if you're just going to buy groceries, you could take your labor coin and directly exchange it with the grocery store,
Hmm.
directly exchange it for gas money, directly exchange it for healthcare or education costs.
I think
And then
the
when you would do that, it might just be tax free to do it that way. And then they
hmm.
could just take those labor coins and pay them directly to their employees. And you wouldn't have this whole thing where, well, you made this income, so now we have to tax part of it. And then you're just basically making it harder for someone to afford to live.
Right. Well, I think a part of that would be kind of how do you ensure the fungibility and also the exchanges of that?
Right.
Because in some ways, we've seen some instances of this, and I'm referring to corporate script or company script, which was how the company towns used to function in the 19th century
Mm-hmm.
before the labor movement, and that created the problem of you're only getting paid in stuff that you can spend at the store that is owned by the
Right.
company.
Well, this
Uh,
is why the system, if a system like this was to ever come about, I think that it would have to be rigorously designed in a way that was sort of almost mathematically sound and protected from problems like that, right? It would have to be the case, like, right? Because if it was like optional for a grocery store to take a labor coin as payment or something, or like, it wasn't like it would have to be done in a way that was like super strict. Like this is what we're doing. This is how it works. And I,
well,
I
in
actually
some
have like a
ways,
whole
we
idea for how this could be basically set
we
up, but
we
it
we sort of
obviously needs a
see
lot of
this
testing and trials. And
existing in the real world in the sense of stores which say either yes we accept SNAP benefits or no we do not accept SNAP
right.
benefits. You could say that that's sort of that the food stamps, the food assistance stamps are sort of a little bit like that kind of currency that you're
But like
proposing.
if you say everyone can only pay their employees with labor coin, like you can't pay people in dollars for anything. Like
Hmm.
you can buy something from someone in dollars, but if you're paying someone for like labor, it has to be in labor coin. And of course, this would introduce all sorts of problems. Like, well, what if you're paying for a massage? Like, well,
Hmm.
it's labor, right?
Hmm.
So are you like, how do you deal with stuff like that? Like, I don't know. There's some things would have to be worked out.
Hmm.
But the point is though, is that like, if you have to pay your employees in labor coin, then like getting paid in labor coin becomes good because if you
Hmm.
have to, otherwise the only other way to get it is to buy it off the exchange at a rate, a
Hmm.
certain rate that costs more than if you just paid it
Hmm.
directly. That would then create an economic incentive for places to just take the direct payments, right? As like
Hmm.
and it would increase the buying power, especially if you make it where if you exchange your labor coin $4, then the more you do that, the less dollars you get per labor coin within like a certain window of time. So that if somebody has makes way more labor coin per hour, then their actual like buying power with that labor coin has like a low pass filter applied on it, where
Mhm.
they, the more they try to use of it to compete with other people for things like healthcare,
Mhm.
uh, the less they're able to outspend other people, because every next dollar they add adds less and less and less money in like a logarithmically declining,
Mhm.
curve or whatever. So I
I
don't know. There's
suppose
a lot of
another
ways you
question.
could think about it, but
There's a lot of things to think about. I mean, the next thing I'm thinking about is so, what happens if I go to Canada or Mexico? I mean, are they even going to take my labor coin or
well, the idea would
dollars
be
or?
that dollars are still there, right?
Mhm.
You just go take your labor coins to the exchange, just like you would do with Bitcoin, right? If you
Mhm.
wanted, if you let's say you have Bitcoin and you want to go to Canada or something,
Mhm.
um, right? You can't. There would be only certain things you could directly spend labor coin on. Like everything else would just have to be. You'd have to convert it to dollars, and when you do
Mhm.
that, that's where the tax gets taken off of, like an income tax. Basically, it's just when you convert it to dollars, and that's like the
So
only
so
place an income
so
tax
with the
happens.
conversion, that would basically mean that we would be taxing all travel abroad, all business abroad,
We
all
already do. I
activities
mean,
abroad.
you
Mhm.
already have to get paid money that you pay income tax on before you can spend it on any of that stuff. So, I mean, we're
Mhm.
already taxing anything you
Mhm.
spend money on now.
Mhm.
The difference here would be is that there would be some things like cost of living stuff that you wouldn't be getting taxed on.
Mhm.
So that your buying power on those things up to a certain threshold, a cost of living threshold, which is like as much as, I don't know, would have to be regionalized, right? Because I mean, cost of living is different in different cities.
Mhm.
Gasoline costs different here than Texas, right? An
Mhm.
apartment in San Francisco versus Nebraska or something, it's like,
Mhm.
so there would have to be, I mean, it would be complicated to set up. And I think that's, I mean, the big challenge of something like
Right,
this.
and that's the other. That becomes the next question: is how much do you regionalize? Would you regionalize it by state, or?
I mean,
Uh,
that's the question. I mean, how you would set up and I think one option you could have is that individual municipalities would have their own like housing coin or something that
mhm.
you have to buy to get your front with your labor coin, and
Mhm.
then you're basically able to, and then that translates to a housing unit in that locality.
Mhm.
And then and so someone in New York City, and I think the other thing that we
Well,
have to think
here's the
about with this
thing.
is real estate. What one of the problems with real estate, right, is how people can just own all this real estate and only live in one house and then basically just control
Mhm.
the market so easily.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's one thing with your proposed housing coin. You know, what's to stop the Delaware problem? And what I mean by the Delaware problem, you could also call it the Panama and Liberia problem. Did you know that most international shipping is flagged with either a Panamanian flag or a Liberian flag because they are the countries that charge the least and have the least amount of regulation
Right.
for inspection of maritime ships. And so, in this situation where you have municipalities,
Hmm.
what's to stop Gresham or, Tigard from just basically trying to attract everything by flooring or tanking their housing coin?
Well,
Or,
look at it this way. What we already have in this country is a situation in which municipalities already compete with each other for people
mm,
to move there by lowering the tax rate.
mm, mm,
But what they can't currently do, really, is like, I mean, but they can kind of subsidize the cost of living to a degree, but there is not like San Francisco has this big problem where the city doesn't really have like a direct control and any kind of lever they can pull directly
mm,
to fix the cost of living of how much rent has gone up there,
mm,
because of the fact that really rent, if you look up the math, right, rent is just, again, it's just supply and demand. You just take the GDP of the city divided by the number of housing units, and you can just track the price, because
mm,
the more money people have to outbid each other
mm,
on the nice apartments, the higher they go.
mm,
It's just that simple. But what we don't have right now is a way to put a like a dampening curve on the the power of the people that have way more money than everybody else to pull all those prices this direction, right?
Or the
Because if you say
capacity of
that,
private equity to act as an inflationary pressure or foreign investment.
yeah,
That is one reason why Canada has imposed a moratorium on foreign home buying, is basically in an effort to stabilize their housing market.
right. And if you say that, for example, you have to pay for your housing in Housing Coin,
Mhm.
and let's say that a given municipality says that rent is going to be 500 housing coins a month baseline. So like you can't charge less than that. That's just like the minimum unit for like an apartment or something.
Mhm.
And then of course landlords that invest more in their properties and have a nicer property or it's got a better location, right? They want to charge more for their property. That makes sense. Well, okay, so if I'm charging 1,000 housing coins for this one over here, right? The question is, how much can I actually raise that price in housing coins to where someone can still afford it or will
Mhm.
pay for that?
Mhm.
And if you say that, well, if you are converting like the first like 500 labor coins you get 500 housing coins for. But to get 1,000 housing coins, you don't go 1,000 labor coins. You have to go 3,000 labor coins to get the 1,000 housing coins. And if you want 2,000 housing coins, you have to spend 10,000 labor coins. And it's so to get to the next incremental level up of cost to the housing, you have to like spend exponentially more of your earnings to get there rather than it just being a one-to-one relationship like it is now. And
So
where does the
basically, your system is basically kind of creating a series of exchanges as a sort of a camouflage for taxation.
effectively, it's not necessarily camouflage, it's a simplification
Mm.
because the idea is that um, rather than saying it's a redistribution of wealth, it's just a system where you put a dampening curve on everything. So you're basically just preventing prices from being able to be pulled the
Mhm.
direction that they would normally be pulled by the economic forces.
Mhm.
And but when it comes to converting to dollars, then you do actually take a cut, and it goes to a tax program. But the thing that's nice about this is that rather than have to file taxes at the end of the year, like if you're one of these rich people that's like I don't I you know taxes just takes away my ability to create jobs.
Mhm.
So if I can create more jobs, isn't that like better than paying taxes to the government? If you want to be that person, the idea there would be that well, if you don't convert any of your labor coins into dollars, you're just taking them and paying them to other people,
Mhm.
you wouldn't be paying any income tax. But then
But
you would also not be spending any money on anything. So, that's which
mhm.
people are going to do, right? So it creates, but then you don't have to kind of file for taxes at the end of the year. It's just every time you want to get some dollars, you have to go to the exchange and it takes a cut and that goes to the taxes and you're done. And if you want to pay people, there's no employment tax. You just pay them your labor coin and they take it and they're paid and you don't need an employment department. You don't need an IRS.
Mhm. Well, you're still going to need some kind of something comparable to the IRS to sort of run all and arbitrate all of these exchange rates. You're
Yeah, you would.
basically
It would be replaced by something that manages how this whole system would function, right? Like it would
mhm.
have to be, uh, but I think that would be a lot less burdensome
Mhm.
on people. Like it becomes kind of like I don't want to call it. I think the nice thing about something like this is that it can appeal to both sides, right? Because it's fixing the problem that I mean, if it would work, I mean, I don't know, maybe this would be
Mhm.
a complete disaster, right? But like, let's say that it would work. I think this would be cool because your Republicans out there would like, hey, no more IRS, right? Isn't that what they want?
Mhm.
They want to get rid of the large bureaucracy you need and all the filling of papers out and having to just if you want to do a small business having to register with the state and have the state employment department managing
But
how
you
you
see,
do all
that's
this
the
stuff.
question I'm raising: is that isn't this just replacing one complex Byzantine system with a slightly different complex Byzantine bureaucratic system?
Well, if it's automated and it's kind of set up in a way that's like mathematically self-balancing, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin is, where
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin is, because of the sort of almost checks and balances of the way Bitcoin was designed, and the fact that it's this decentralized thing. It's unhackable because the act of hacking it is how you make a new Bitcoin, right? It's not like a traditional system, which is why the blockchain is such a transformative technology, because it doesn't require a centralized server that you can hack into to run.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely set up differently. And and you don't have to have some weird committee managing it. It doesn't require, it's just sort of this self-maintaining system because of the way it's designed. And I think if you could have a system that worked, that was set up like that, where it may seem complicated, and I think there would have to be some degree of management to it, right? Because I mean, obviously, um, you have to have, well, what is the cost of living, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you set it up right, where the cost of living is sort of self-defined within the system itself, in terms of its own network of currencies, it would just be self-balancing,
Mm-hmm.
and it would ideally not require anyone to pull those levers or make those decisions, because the market forces themselves would be the things that would be keeping it going, kind of like
But
a
market
molecule
forces
of
can be
opposing forces
irrational.
that's just stable in its structure, and
If
so
the history of economy and the history of panics and crises has shown us anything, it is that it is possible for the markets to be irrational rather than rational.
this is true. And I think that's the major question of how you get something like this in place where it's resistant to that, or it has
Mm-hmm.
some checks and balances to be able to get through those kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, so that's the question, how you would have to design it. um, but we're talking about something that would essentially revolutionize the entire economy. Like, you're getting rid, I mean, or the fundamentals of it,
Mm-hmm.
you'd still have the dollar on top of everything. This is kind of like this underpinning for all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe at some point the dollar becomes something else entirely. And of course, I think that even the big banks, and I think politicians know that something like this could be in the works or coming potentially. And
Yeah, well,
I hear this in Republican media particularly, is this sort of fear mongering about any system that tries to introduce a digital currency,
mm-hmm.
right? They're deathly afraid of it, because I
Mm-hmm.
think they know the traditional banking system, the Federal Reserve, the fractional reserve banking, that's driving the ability to have this massive inflation, which obviously just benefits the certain power elite, right? It's not helping regular people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that whole system is fundamentally flawed, and it's only by the consent of the people, and the lack of, and like, they have to kind of manufacture a fear of anything that might go against that.
Well, but this is actually one place where I kind of weirdly share those views because I'm thinking about Russia and I'm thinking about Russia in two periods. The period of the NEP, Lenin's, new economic plan, and then the transition to the 5-year plans with central planning during the
Right.
Russian Civil War, but also the 1990s, where you had a deregulation of the planned economy of the Soviet Union, and you basically had everything taken over by oligarchs, which ultimately resulted in Putin becoming the dictator. And so I think that's the thing is that, how do we prevent this from just becoming the window for Stalin or Vladimir Putin to take over?
Of
How do we
course. Yeah,
prevent? Yeah,
anytime you create like a digital currency or something, right?
a
It's not just money you
redistribution
can hold in
of
your
the
hand.
economy.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you're basically, even if it's self-maintaining now, what's to
Mm,
say that some future government doesn't turn it into a system of control and suddenly just change all the rules of how it works, and now what, now what?
mhm,
And I think those sorts of questions are the kind of, like, the system would have to be designed in a way that's resistant to that.
mhm,
Like the fact that, like with Bitcoin, right, it's its own thing. Like, once it's
mhm,
out there, it's not under the control of a government.
mhm,
It's sort of, I think it would have to be a system that works kind of like that. And I think you would also have to have, it would have to be set up in a way where it doesn't just get rolled out to the entire country all at once. Like, like you see in these countries where some big, huge change comes and suddenly you go to this planned economy across a whole country. And, they're not like trying it in one little local area and see how it goes. And then if that works, maybe try it in a few more cities and a few more states and scale it out and then deploy it uh, gradually. And I think that's the way you have to approach it. It's why we haven't seen something like online voting in this country yet. You see it in places in Europe and smaller countries where they can try these newer ideas. There's fewer people. It's a more homogenous culture. It's a lot easier for people to kind of get on board with this new idea. You're not deploying it across however many millions of square miles like the United States has, right? So, I don't know that something like this could probably happen like in our lifetimes. I don't know. But
Yeah,
I
well,
just don't know how we fix things like the income inequality that's honestly accelerating, getting worse, compoundingly worse. It's like I think
Thomas
we're on a
Piketty
threshold
has
of
a
it
very
becoming way out of control now.
well. It's already more. We're more unequal than France was before the French Revolution.
Yeah.
There's more disparity between Donald Trump and a homeless person than there was between Louis XVI and a French peasant.
Right. Well, and
Uh,
I'm not saying that we shouldn't have wealthy people or there shouldn't be unequal distribution of wealth. I'm just saying that given that it's going to be like that, there just needs to be systems in place to protect the ability of regular people to work a job and honest work and make enough money to pay for education and healthcare and the cost of living and live like a good life. And then but you shouldn't be punished for being successful, right? Like I think we need to maintain the ability for people to be rewarded
Well,
for
I think something that we should discuss at
success.
some point is, have you had an opportunity to read Thomas Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century?
Mm,
Because I would say that's one of the important books, to be
I'll check it out.
literate about, kind of when discussing. His central conclusion is that without there being a war, epidemic, or disaster in a capitalist system, inequality only continues to grow and grow and grow.
Well, I
And
think this is based on the idea of capitalism as we know it, with the single currency system. And that doesn't even factor in necessarily the problem of inflation that you get from like the fractional reserve banking system.
yeah, and of course that's another challenge is just how this whole system would interact with the international currency trading and with world markets. I think that's another hazard is that much as there was a point before World War II where the Soviet ruble was basically underwater. And the Soviet Union had to trade in raw resources because their currency would not be accepted. Um,
Right.
there's kind of the question of, you implement the system and suddenly, I mean, the first question I was, is how do you prevent the company town scenario? How do you ensure the
Well,
fungibility
I
of
mean,
this?
how do you prevent that
Yeah.
with Bitcoin?
hmm
I mean, it's just an irrelevant question because the existence of something like Bitcoin doesn't preclude being able to exchange it for whatever currency you want because it has this sort of an inherent uh, value to it by its nature. And so, and because of the way that it's set up, it's actually gone, the value of it has been resistant to things like inflation, even when everything else was inflating.
That's an
Um,
interesting topic. Okay, so
And so, like if you would have bought uh, like 15 years ago, it's like $100,000 in Bitcoin, like you'd be like rich now.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know? Like so,
Every dollar in Bitcoin that was purchased is something like $19,400 in real currency or something like
I mean,
that.
and I'm not saying that like labor coin would be like that degree, but like just imagine if, you know, it would restore the kind of a balance we had between what like a median income earner makes now
Mm-hmm.
and what a CEO makes. Because
Mm-hmm.
if median income had, or actually even if minimum wage had kept up with CEO pay since 1955, it'd be like what, $85 an hour or more
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and if that's what people could get paid getting minimum wage, like we wouldn't have a lot of the problems we have, because even if you were unemployed, you'd probably have a family or friend or somebody that could afford to just give you health care, or
Mm-hmm.
it'd be real easy for a nonprofit or something to get
Yeah.
health care for a lot of people. And so, you know, and this is where the way that the inflation has gone, you know, and I think this is one of those things where we could look at capitalism as a system and go, it has some bugs in it. And I think one of the things, that's what Marx kind of did too, right? He went through and looked at some of the bugs in
Mm-hmm.
capitalism, but the solutions that he proposed to that
Mm-hmm.
weren't didn't work out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't mean we can't talk about there being bugs in capitalism, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's some other solutions that are completely not Marxism, but are actually maybe even more
Mm-hmm.
capitalistic than capitalism is currently. Because in capitalism, when you have a minimum wage, that's like that's like not capitalistic in certain ways. Or when, I mean, you know, that's where like if the labor coin is what you're paying people in, but then you can exchange the labor coin for value
Mm-hmm.
directly. Um, Maybe that saves the system in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an in-depth conversation that needs a lot more thought
Yeah.
to flesh it out. But
But an interesting one to have. Yeah. And just sort of an interesting preview of the future as we continue slow rolling through what science fiction author William Gibson called the jackpot.
jeez,
Which this blog seems to be an ongoing chronicle of. So we'll see kind of what happens. Probably by the next time we broadcast, we'll see a real end of the food assistance and also the healthcare enrollment, and we'll be even further into the longest government shutdown in history. And yeah,
well, what's been going on with the Voting Rights Act case? Just as an aside, or I know we're pretty much at time, but
yeah.
maybe we can talk about that next time because I feel
Next
like
time, I don't think that there's been any real updates on that, other than that the Supreme Court is going to be hearing on the challenge, that Louisiana was presented. But I haven't heard any additional new hearings, so I imagine that the law clerks of the Supreme Court are scurrying around and doing their master's bidding and trading favors, and that's another thing that we will have to wait and see about. Yeah.
I think if anything, the ability for people to vote is the most important aspect of democracy, and so you know, you can agree with the Republicans on some things or the Democrats on some things, but I think we can all agree that everyone being able to vote and have their vote counted and have it be fair and have an
Yeah.
actual representative democracy is if that's not happening, then what are we doing? So,
Well, it's
all right,
setting
man.
things towards yeah, even more retaliatory. If the Voting Rights Act is eliminated, then there's going to be even more things like Measure 50, which is in California, and that will just be things that the Democrats will implement in Democratic-controlled states in order to offset the loss of 19
Right. And
Democratic
then that,
Congress
which
people.
isn't fair either, right? Because
Yeah.
now you're basically saying, well, if you're a Republican and you live in California, now your vote's going to count for less. And
Right.
why should that be fair? So,
That's the sort of the I mean it's really moving us more and more to a civil war where you have a northeast and
I
a
sure
west
hope not,
coast that's
man.
controlled by one party, and you have a south that's controlled by another party. You
No, we
know.
have to find a way to avoid that. I just don't
Mm.
think, I don't think war could possibly be a solution or anything we should even
Well, I
consider.
don't know that civil war is a solution, but I think civil war is a scenario that is a lot more probable. But I don't think it's going to be a civil war like the first American Civil War. I think it's going to be a civil war like the Years of Lead in Italy or like the Salvadorian Civil War. So
Yeah,
what we
let's not
think
even
of.
think about that right now, man.
Okay.
I'd like to not even put those thoughts out there because,
Mm,
I have a belief that that this country is different, that
mm.
we're different now, and that we can, maybe it's an irrational belief these days because politics has gotten so divided, but
It's certainly a hypothesis that's being tested as harshly as possible.
I feel like if we can find a platform that the majority of people can agree with that works for most people, that's an alternative to either current party. I feel like people are just like super thirsty for that and
Mhm.
super hungry for that, and people would just like instantly go with that if that was even out there. And I know that like people have tried the third party thing before, and it's like, oh, it's doomed to fail, and but maybe it just hasn't been done right before.
Well, I
Anyway,
mean, one of the things we'd have to look at is to discuss other things like the 1824 elections, 1860 elections, 1912. That would require a case study in where did those other third party movements from Perot to the Whigs, where did they go wrong? Where did they stumble? And that is a very interesting political question and a historical question that I'd be happy to talk about sometime. So,
hell yeah, let's talk about it
yeah,
next time, man.
yeah, yeah.
All right, well,
Okay.
this has been By a Fire. I've been John. This has been Devin, and
Hmm.
we just talk politics and everything, and
Yeah.
we're by the fire, like all
We'll
of
see
us.
you next week, hopefully. All
Yes,
right. Okay.
like